Hi everyone. No voiceovers, no dialogues, just gestures, just timing, and the silence between them. No storms, but something shifts, and not everything finds its place. Hit subscribe, and stay with me through the silence. Early morning. Sunlight poured over the rows of taro plants, glistening on the green leaves still wet from the rain. Tu Tieu knelt down, her hands brushing the damp soil as she carefully pulled out weeds clinging stubbornly to the roots. She moved with quiet patience, unhurried, as if long accustomed to this rhythm, a life of solitude, simplicity, and quiet strength. No music, no voices, only the cicadas humming in the heat of summer, and the steady breath of someone deeply connected to the land. From a distance, Uri arrived. He said nothing. He didn't need to. He simply stepped into the scene, as if he had always belonged here. Together, they began measuring bamboo, preparing to build a kitchen table. There was no fuss between them, only the rhythm of shared purpose. One handed the bamboo, the other measured. One bent down to nail, the other held the pole firm. The sunlight burned longer across the dry ground. Sweat soaked through their shirts. Yet neither of them complained. They were building something. Not just a table, but something quiet and unspoken between them. A sense of companionship. The silence between them became meaningful. Every motion was a kind of language, simple but resonant. As if something had just begun, the sunlight tilted across the thatched roof. In the yard, bamboo clinked softly, dry and familiar. Tu Tieu measured with precision while Uri stood across from her, holding each bamboo pole steady. Their actions needed no instruction. They worked like they'd done it countless times. Or perhaps they simply understood each other without words. The kitchen table slowly took shape from bamboo and wood. The breeze slipped through unfinished gaps, carrying the scent of soil, sweat, and sunlight. Uri gripped the saw. Tu Tieu held the timber firm. The sound of the chisel echoed steadily, not hurried, not forced, like the heartbeat of two people quietly building something more enduring than just furniture. No words, no exchanged glances, just coordination and trust. For a moment, Uri's hand brushed lightly against hers while passing a tool. Brief, unintentional, yet it made Tu Tieu pause. Nothing was said, but their rhythm shifted, subtly. Something delicate moved in the air, a hairline crack forming across a still surface. At last, the table stood upright, bare, simple, but proud. And in that quiet moment, they both stood still, gazing at what they had made. Not because of the table itself, but because of what had begun to grow in the silence that surrounded it. In a softly lit room, morning light streaming through the windows, the atmosphere held a quiet weight. The elder man sat calmly, hands wrapped around a teacup. Across from him was Egan, composed, meticulous, yet bracing himself beneath the surface. He was reporting on a construction project, every word firm, calculated, but not without pressure. The blueprint lay still on the table, a silent reminder of the responsibility ahead. The conversation soon drifted from work. The elder asked about marriage. His gaze was thoughtful, not only concerned for Egan's future, but testing the maturity of a man facing life's crossroads. Egan smiled politely, deflecting. He claimed work kept him occupied. Marriage wasn't on his mind. But something flickered behind his eyes, an uncertainty, or perhaps a hesitation toward a path not yet taken. Then the door opened. The secretary entered, composed, carrying a folder of plans. The energy in the room shifted. Her presence was quiet but defined. Their interaction remained strictly professional, yet something passed silently between them. Nothing romantic, just an awareness. A slow door creaking open. The elder watched, saying nothing more. He didn't need to. His gaze alone placed a subtle weight on Egan's shoulders, not just of duty to the project, but to the quiet possibilities that now stood waiting. On the quiet upper floor, light filtered through the glass, casting long shadows across the face of the man who had once lain unconscious. Now, he sat upright, alert, with a gaze steeped in reflection. The cup of herbal medicine before him still let off faint steam, curling like half-formed memories. He stared out the window, saying nothing, but no longer silent inside. He picked up his phone and called his assistant. His voice dropped low, deliberate. "Prepare the money. A large sum, the same as before." The assistant hesitated, mentioning part of it had already been used. But the man didn't falter. This time, he would return to the place that had saved his life. Not to repay, but to close something unfinished. Green tea was poured. He took a sip, slow, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. No words could capture what stirred in him. Gratitude, yes, but also a nameless weight pressing quietly on his chest. He had offered money once and been refused. But this time, he wouldn't just bring money. He would bring sincerity and a question that remained unanswered. If a heart expects nothing in return, how does one offer thanks that truly reaches it? The midday sun beat down on the small courtyard. The final nails were driven in, the last wooden slats secured. Tu Tieu looked over the new kitchen space, rustic, imperfect, but something in her chest softened. Uri wiped the sweat from his brow, hands still covered in dirt, his gaze following her in quiet understanding. The space had taken shape. A table sturdy enough for cooking, an open area wide enough to breathe in the summer heat. It wasn't polished, but it felt alive. A rhythm of shared effort, of mutual presence. Suddenly, Tu Tieu moved with purpose. She headed to the garden, gathering fresh vegetables, then waved for Yuri to join her in catching a chicken. No words exchanged, they moved together through the familiar rows of greenery, steps in sync like companions long accustomed to one another. The chicken darted, kicking up dust. There was no laughter, but something in their eyes sparkled. Tu Tieu caught one bird, steady and calm. Uri stepped in, hands firm but gentle. Each action was unforced, like a practiced dance. The vegetables were rinsed, the chicken prepared. Water began to boil over the fire in their new kitchen. These were small tasks, ordinary ones. Yet now, every gesture carried weight. Together, they weren't just preparing a meal. They were shaping a home. Midday hung in stillness, like a breath held between heartbeats. Alan returned, no longer the unconscious man from the roadside, but a composed figure carrying gratitude and a briefcase full of cash. Tu Tieu and Uri greeted him, not cold, but reserved. The meal was ready. Vegetables boiled, chicken plated, rice warm on the table. A simple meal, like the life they lived. Alan sat down. His eyes held the weight of things unspoken. No one mentioned the past. No one asked about the present. They invited him to eat, and he nodded. The meal unfolded slowly. Alan eventually spoke his thanks and placed the briefcase on the table. Inside was a large sum. He offered it to Tu Tieu, his sincerity clearer in his eyes than in the money itself. But she refused, gently, firmly. Yuri stayed silent, letting the moment settle. The air grew heavy, not with tension, but with the quiet ache of gratitude left unreceived. Alan closed the briefcase. His gaze drifted over the new kitchen, the wooden table, the steam still rising. Nothing here could be bought, and something in him shifted. He nodded quietly. He stayed to finish the meal. This time he understood. Not everyone needs to be repaid. Some things are meant to be honored not with wealth, but with presence. Evening drifted in softly, casting long tree shadows across the earth. Alan had gone. Leaving behind the briefcase Tu Tieu had firmly declined. The meal was over, gratitude spoken, yet something lingered, unfinished. Uri stood quietly by the doorway, watching the fading trail of dust where Alan's figure had vanished. Behind him, Tu Tieu tidied the kitchen in silence. The space held only the faint clatter of a knife on wood, the cooling hush of the charcoal stove. Then she paused, her voice calm. "Why didn't you tell Alan you're a CEO?" There was no accusation, just a question pulled from something unsettled. Yuri turned away slightly. His reply came low, weighted. "I don't want people knowing who I am. You never know if they're good or not." A quiet settled again. She nodded, said nothing more. They returned to their separate tasks, but the room felt different. Not because of the secret, but because of a distance. Thin, almost invisible, like the film of dust on a freshly cleaned surface. Yuri sat down, eyes on the dormant stove. He could have told the truth, opened up, but he chose silence. Whether from fear, caution, or a need to guard something private, whatever the reason, something between him and Tu Tieu was no longer untouched. A new kitchen stood complete. But some things, in the end, remained unbuilt. Thank you for watching. No spoilers, no promises. Just quiet people and the things they carry. Subscribe to follow the next quiet shift.